and welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta.
And I'm Connie, and today we are here with Gordon Jenkins. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you deal when shit gets real.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. Who am I? So I'm an executive coach or a mentor. I really don't care. No, I do care what you call me, but I don't differentiate between a coach and mentor. What I do, I hold people accountable, and I make shit happen. Right? I hold back. I get people to do things that's stopping them moving forward. I suppose we'll talk about it. I've had a bit of an interesting life. I don't think I've had a better life or worse life than anyone else. I've just had a life that I've learned that when shit happens, you can either stand in the corner or sit in the corner and go, it's not fair. Or you can get off your backside and do something about it. And I think that's been my life. I'm 51 years old. And as far back as I can remember being bullied at school, through being dyslexic at university, moving to Australia, being a successful finance executive, managing large teams, and now being a coach and setting up a medical foundation. It's just about making a big impact, making a difference.
So what actually, since you brought up dyslexia, what tip would you give a student with dyslexia?
It's really interesting. When I was a kid, no one knew what dyslexia was. And for me, I was a mathematical genius, but I couldn't read. So I got put in the nonces class, right? And I don't like using the word nonces. Nonces is, in English, that means the thick class. But no one could understand what it was about. But today, now that we know, and I didn't actually know I had dyslexia until I finished my university degree.
Wow.
It's actually me. So I went through school not knowing. So I was a bit like, the Good Will Hunting? I could look at mathematics and I could do maths in my head really, really quickly, but I couldn't actually read.
Wow.
So what I'd say to people with dyslexia is don't let dyslexia or others beat you down. Own it, because it's only one small part of your DNA. It's only one small part of DNA. And today I think that we need to, when I look at my school and I talked about being a mathematical genius, I wanted to do complex cooking. I would have been a great chef if I would have been allowed to do cooking, but because I was a block boy, I had to do woodwork. I think that my dyslexia today helps me connect things and form complex and often unconventional ways of thinking. And there's three things I found I'm good at that dyslexia has made me good at. I see the bigger picture. And if you look at dyslexic people, they tend to see a bigger picture. They tend to be creative. And I'm creative. I'm not the one who does the detail, but I'm the one that helps people with the detail. And I'm a great problem solver. And I'm a great problem solver and enabling people to solve problems as well. So own it. Dyslexia is just, we can either worry about that 5% or we can really live the 95%.
And there's now a lot of workarounds for it, now because unlike when you were a child, they didn't know any better. Now people know and find workarounds to still learn.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not criticizing my schooling. If they just didn't know what it was, they had a system, right, and you didn't fit that system. Okay,
they didn't know what to do with you.
Yeah,
no, absolutely. I was in maths. I was brilliant in schools, and my report card was always could do better. Well, if you look at that, if you look back, you go, the system could do better, but the system didn't know.
Yeah, it didn't know
to do better.
Mm-hmm.
My mom has dyslexia too, and she was, around the same. She's a little older than you, but it was the same thing. They didn't know what it was. But I definitely agree with you that people with dyslexia tend to be creative because she's very creative. She's a beautiful painter and drawer.
That makes me feel really old, that when you said, my mom has that and she's a little bit older than you. Don't have to worry about it. But the creativity. So it's a beautiful. So for me, it's in a way, I use it as a little bit of an excuse now, because when I write, people say your spelling's wrong. I said, well, dyslexic. It's always funny when I have someone who sends me a document and said, can you please check the spelling? I went, what, you're asking the dyslexic to check the spelling? Really? I'll check your maths, but I can't check your spelling.
Yeah, exactly. So since you wrote books, how difficult was it to write a book? Did you just not worry about it and just let the editor handle it?
My dad, God bless his soul, was a quite famous journalist, a motor journalist in the UK. I love when he wrote. He just wrote as he spoke. and there's a real connectivity and real communication on it. And with my business, when I talk about networking, I talk about how it's simple to network, and there's 4 ways to network. And people are saying you should write a book about it. You should write a book about it. My automatic default is no, because I don't know how to write. I don't know how. So get me on stage in front of 10,000 people and I can speak. In fact, you'll have to throw me off the stage. I can speak that long. Get me to do a video. Get me to do a video. Nah, I hate videos. And writing a book, my palms will sweat straight away because I can't write. I don't know how to write. So I was sitting down with my wife and I was telling her what to do. And she goes, well, let's do it a different way. If I hate when a coach starts being coached, I don't really like it. She goes, well, if you were a client, if that was a client of yours, what would you say to the client? I said, we'll find a different way to do it. So we found a system, funny enough, and this great system called YouTube and Google. It's amazing what you find these days about how people write books with dyslexia. And we formed it, and we basically, in a very short way, I spent some days on my wall and whiteboarded it and split my book up into 6 different chapters and sat in an office. And my wife actually interviewed me based on what the bullet points I put in on the wall. We recorded it. We then used Fiverr to get hold of someone in the UK that could understand this accent, who dictated it. And she works for the court, so she was able to dictate it really quickly. Came back to us. That cost us about $20 US. We found
that's really quick.
Oh, yeah. We found a system.
Cheap. Yeah.
Cheap. We found and this was about 15,000 words. We found a system called Kartra that helps you self-publish. We then went back onto Fiverr and Unsplash, I think it was, and a couple of other these web-based things, and found someone that could do a front cover and a back cover. Wendy did some research on what we needed with the ISBN numbers, and we basically self-published. So I published a book. I didn't write a book, right? And I've sold 5,000 copies. I'm in 87 countries. I've got hundreds of libraries. I'm actually on the 2nd edition of the book, and I've spent less than $500 on marketing.
That's awesome.
Nice.
So if people say to me, you can't do it, or if people say you can't do it because you're dyslexic, I'm saying, well, I can do it. I just don't have to follow the traditional way of thinking.
You just rework it.
You just rework it. And then people ask me how I do it. So what do I do? I was sitting down with Wendy and going, well, what do I do? So we actually put together a course of videos of how we produce the book. It's on the website, $97, I think it is. And if someone wants to self-publish a book, it shows them how to do it. And I'm actually going to do my 2nd book in a couple of weeks' time and sit down and do that.
That's exciting.
Give us a sneak peek of the 2nd book. Come on.
So the 2nd book is about who's on your plane. So with my expertise is in networking, and I build a framework as if you're going into an airport. So when you go into an airport, and the plane, before the plane can fly, it has to be fueled. It has to put the baggage on it. So that's like your own ecosystem. So you got to get yourself fit and ready before you can look after other people. And then the airplane is, if you think about an airplane, you got first class, business class, and second economy. Well, that's the type of network you build. Those in first class are more important to your growth than those in economy, and you service them slightly differently. And my whole framework's about that. And I take people, instead of thinking about where I want to grow to today for tomorrow, I look at where you want to be in 7 years and bring it backwards. Again, a different way of thinking. So that's what the book's about. And then there will be a book about the rubber duck.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about Banfi the duck? And you know what? When Rietta told me about this, I was like, so he's like my dad. Because my dad, there's these like little boofle. It's like a little bear type thing, and he brings them everywhere, and they're like stitched and handmade in England. So like when she told me about Banfi the duck, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be interviewing my father.
So I say to people, when people say to me, what do you do, Gordon? I said, I can tell you about being an executive coach. I can tell you about why I wear odd shoes, or I can tell you why I've got a little rubber duck in my pocket.
I want to know about the rubber ducky.
No one ever asked me about it. No one ever asked me about the executive coach, but it comes back to the same thing. So I know people on the screen can't see, listen to this can't see, but for you guys, that's what he looks like. He is an actual rubber duck.
He's so cute.
And you will get one. We'll get your addresses afterwards, and I'll send one in the post to you. So, And I actually, you know, the beauty about the rubber duck, I actually get paid to talk about the rubber duck now. I actually get paid to stand on stage and talk about rubber duck. You know, when you go to a conference and you get pens and water bottles?
Yeah.
When was the last time you get a rubber duck?
Never.
And guess what? When you go home, what's the first thing people are going to say? What's with the rubber duck? So it's become part of my business. So the story behind Banfi, so I'll do this quickly, and if you want to ask me bits and pieces, let me know. So we've always had a rubber duck in our lives, and it started a lot when I was doing a lot of traveling in the hotels. I was staying at Gave a Rubber Duck, and I used to bring a rubber duck back for Wendy. And because we don't have kids, and when we ever go away on holiday, instead of just taking pictures of the landscape, we used to take pictures of the rubber duck. But Wendy had a lung transplant in 2006, and the average lifespan of someone with a lung transplant is 6 years. So that's what they promote, 6 years. When 6 years came up and Wendy wasn't doing too well, we decided to take a holiday of a lifetime. We weren't going to wait till we were 16 and retire. We wanted to live this life now. So we went off to Europe. We went to Italy and France. And Banfi is named after a place in Tuscany called Castello Banfi. And it's one of these beautiful castles on top of a hill with a beautiful sunset and infinity pool. It's absolutely beautiful. And it was there that Wendy decided that she wasn't going to sit in the corner waiting to die, that we would live life to the full, which was a bit of a problem because we had this holiday of a lifetime on the understanding that Wendy was going to die the next year, and this holiday of a lifetime, her insurance would pay for it. But now as Wendy decided not to die, so I've got to work out how I'm going to pay for this holiday of a lifetime, which was thought was damn rude of her. So very
Hashtag worth it, though.
Hey,
yeah, right?
Absolutely. So I came back to Australia. I tried to get work, and I was positively discriminated against because apparently I'm white, I'm male, and I'm over 40. But I needed to work and I needed to pay for Wendy's medicine. And when I say I was positively discriminated against, we've got 4 major banks in Australia. And I was sat down with the senior leaders of one of the major banks who said to me face to face, if you're a female and you're under 35, we would have employed you.
Wow.
And I said to them, well, the problem is the other 2 people going for the jobs are my friends, and they're both females, and they're both under 35s. But they both know if they get the job, it's because of the gender diversity play, not because they're worth it, not because they're better than me. So they actually put number 4 in instead. So I'm stood there going, how am I going to afford to pay for Wendy's medicine? And I need the money to pay for Wendy, because this is not just vitamins. This is life-saving medicine that she needs to take every single day. So in Melbourne, we've got a bridge called the Westgate Bridge, which is very much like the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. I don't know what made me do it, but I drove over the bridge 3 or 4 times, really thinking that, if I stop and I jump, that the insurance payout will pay off the mortgage and at least give Wendy some certainty going forward. On the 5th journey over, I slowed at the top. I was ready to stop the car. And as I slowed, I looked down on the seat and I saw a little Banfi on the seat. And I remember what Wendy said. And Wendy said, we've got to make sure every day counts. No matter what happens, we can get through this. It's not about getting in the valley. It's how you get out the valley. That's really important. That's basically makes your destiny. So obviously I didn't jump because I'm here. I'm also scared of heights, which is another problem, but let's not go there. So I came off the bridge, pulled into a gas station, petrol station, and called a friend. Didn't call a psychologist, called a friend that had gone through severe PTSD and severe depression, who's ex-military. I called him and got some help. So today, Banfi embodies, I suppose, what we can overcome. He's what we can achieve with the right mindset and the right support. Every single day, he reminds me to live life fearlessly. I think that's what I do. I live fearlessly. It's not recklessly, but fearlessly, to break the boundaries of imagination, innovation, and to celebrate who you are and who I am, who we are as people. He symbolizes strength. We do live with purpose because we set up a foundation on the back of Wendy's sickness, and that's what he is. And I don't go anywhere with it. I've got a big tattoo of him on my arm. So he's with me all the time. I walk around with him all the time. I don't go. In fact, we've been out and I haven't got a Banfi, and I've actually gone back home and picked up a Banfi. So, yeah, he's my.
Well,
It's
when I
walk
get
around.
powerful
Banfi, I'll
story.
have to take photos with my dad's version of Banfi, Boofle.
Yeah.
And
So
they're
he's
both
actually-
bees. They're going to be friends.
So so the interesting thing about bees, all our pets are named and started with the letter B as well. So he's got his own Instagram account. So he's a bit of a foodie. So when he goes to restaurants, we put him out there, and he gets a bit of stardom in that way. So he's
I love it.
he's my friend. And I think I thought it was a bit weird, but like you say, your father's got one. When you start looking around, Banfi's my superhero.
Oh, yeah. He
And-
calls him my brother. I'm like, this is a stuffed animal.
So,
But okay.
and they thought it's a rubber duck. No, it's not a rubber duck. He's Banfi. And I get really quite passionate about it. So I think we've all in our lives, we've all got a superhero, and it doesn't need to be a rubber duck. But I think we can all relate to something that's been really impactful in our lives, can help us, that's changed the way we think, that can help us move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Is Wendy still with you?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, she is.
I was like, oh no, he paused. She's gone.
I know. I was like,
No,
well, that's
she's-
amazing.
No, she's still with us. And I think this is really important in understanding how you experience life. The thing that when you have a serious operation like a double lung transplant, and they tell you that the average is 7 years, you've got to understand what that. You think I'm only going to live for 7 years, and that's a mindset thing. What's the point of going through all this trauma of having a lung transplant if I'm only going to live 7 years? So. But what you have to understand is, and this is only because we set up a foundation, we started doing more research into this. When you say 7 years, that's all the lung transplants in Australia put together and used in the world. But every single lung transplant is different. So you're using the wrong sample size to look at it. And to say this is the average, then that means that someone's lived less and someone's lived longer. So there's someone in Australia who's had a double lung transplant that's 32 years. Post-transplant. Okay, so you could be, and when you look around the world, what is classed as a successful lung transplant changes. So it could well be as soon as you leave the operating theatre, that's classed as success. As soon as you leave the ICU, that's a success. As soon as you leave hospital, that's a success. So the average is a bit tainted. So what we actually do now, we actually don't talk about the average any longer. We actually talk about if you do the right things, and we talked offline about COVID and everything else. If you do the right things and look after yourself, so you don't start smoking, you don't go and get tattoos, you don't go out in the sun, you take your medication when you take your medication, you get your flu injections. If you live life the way you should live life, that the average you have post-transplant should be the same as if you're just as anyone else who hasn't had a transplant. So Wendy's still with us. She has her own business. She's my CFO. We've got reversed roles at home. She does all the financing and I do all the cooking.
Nice.
Which is good. She's got her own business, and we live every day. We make every day count, and that's what we do.
I was really interested to hear her story because we actually had an aunt. She's since passed, but one of the things that they talked about for her was a lung transplant, and that was one of the reasons that they actually didn't end up doing it because the average was so low, and they said that the recovery was so hard. So it was it's nice to hear your story.
Thank you for that. And I think one of the things that we've learned from the medical world is they're fantastic in what they do, but sometimes the way they communicate to people is not necessarily, is very harsh. And they said to people when we talked about when we're on the lung transplant journey, they said you'd be out of hospital within 14 days, and some people do jump out straight away. I think Wendy spent the first 60 days, the first 45 days in ICU. Her biggest problem post lung transplant was she couldn't breathe. And that wasn't because of the lungs, it's because she'd never actually been breathing properly, because she's never breathed from her stomach. She's always breathed from her upper chest. So she wasn't actually able to breathe.
So she had to learn how to breathe.
She had to learn how to breathe in ICU while she's, in a coma type stuff. And then she had a few other problems. Then she went through really, really bad depression, post PTSD, a lot of anger, a lot of regret. And then, Wendy was, now you're going to check the age, was 14 years, 35. So we got told she couldn't have kids. And then, of course, with the female genes and everything else, you're going through that process where all your friends have got kids, and you can't have kids and all that feeling. And for me, and I'm not saying for me as a bloke, but for me, I always wanted lots of kids, but as soon as we realized we couldn't have kids, I was able to flip out of it. But for her, it's been a bit harder. More. It's a part of her. So these are things they don't tell you happens when you have a transplant, nor do they tell you about a carer. And one of the things that I learned about this in the issue for this call is that everyone calls up and says, "How's Wendy? How's Wendy? How's Wendy?" No one actually asks how Gordon is as the carer. Right? Everyone forgets how the impact of the carer.
Yeah.
Right. And I felt quite lonely and I felt quite hard. And, the hospital doesn't do anything. You go to speak to a psychologist and you sit in a room and, they're not really interested in you. They're more interested in the transplant because they don't have many transplant patients. And you're sat there going, who do I call upon? So you've got to do things differently. And one of the things I found is that sometimes the best people to call upon are those around you. You just got to look at them slightly differently because not everyone's good with coping with baggage. And sometimes you don't want to cope with baggage. Sometimes you just want to let loose, scream, shout.
My brother on Saturday was in a really bad accident. His neck was fractured. That was like one of the things I'd ask, okay, well, how's Mitch and how are you, to my mom and to his wife? Because he's in the ICU and I know that it's going to be like, it's hard for them seeing him like that and having to go through everything as much as it is difficult for him. I mean, technically it's kind of easy for him. He's been sedated the whole time. Yeah. He's in dreamland. They have to really deal with it. So I get what you're saying, where they should be asking how you are too.
And he's got a team of specialists around him 24/7.
Right.
You go home and you go, shit, what am I supposed to do?
And it's going to be a long road to recovery. So there's going to be a lot more messages of, okay, how are you? And how are both of you doing?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that was one of the first questions I think we wrote to you in our email was asking you what it was like taking care of somebody who had a double lung transplant.
No one's ever asked me that. So I'm going to read this. I've got this on my screen. I'm going to read it because I'm going to read it as it came out when I saw that, as it came out of my head. So the first thing I want to stress is it's my experience and everyone's experience is different. And I don't want anyone who's listening who think they're going to go through an organ transplant. I don't want them to think that because it's my experience that it's going to be different. So I thought it was strange or unknown. You do it because you love the person. And I actually cried when I wrote this down. Don't want to make you guys cry. Because no matter what you've experienced in life, no matter how many qualifications in life, nothing can put you in the right position for what you're going to experience. And you go to an area that I never knew existed in my body, in my DNA, in my mindset, in terms of that unconditional love, that unconditional care for someone. I do understand now when you get married and it says for love and health, for good and bad. If I actually knew what that meant, I might have said no. No, I wouldn't have said no.
Now you really understand it.
I think for me, there's been a realization that there's no such thing as normal. And that the lives we are told to live, so the lives we're told our kids to live, is extremely insular and extremely limiting into what we can actually achieve as humans. I mean, the strength that I've pulled out to look after, to care for Wendy and care for myself and do that. We have its good days and we have bad days. We've also realized now as a carer that it's without regret, that what we're going through is we're doing this together. We feel different, we act differently, but this is together, which also means that sometimes we may say things that may hurt the other person, but we do it because we love that other person so much that we're allowed to say things, but we're saying it because they're in the room, but we're not saying it to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that, for me, I think the biggest thing I've learned from caring for Wendy is, I don't want to live a traditional life. Like, a traditional life is so boring. If Wendy hadn't gone through this, we would have carried on the corporate gravy train. We were probably living in somewhere in Europe. We'd probably have, a nice house, 2, 3, 4 kids, traditional holidays, traditional life. Shit, my life has been so much more purposeful since that event. So much more purposeful. I used to talk about my life was cash rich and passion poor. And now I just call it passion rich.
Love that.
Yeah.
You see, when you ask that question, you can go, again, you can go on and talk about, it's not been an easy ride, but life's not an easy ride. Nothing we go through is an easy ride. But I look at all the positives, all the great friends I've met. The really interesting thing about being a carer and going through an experience like this, you learn who your friends are. You really
don't doubt that.
In my business, we talk about getting rid of toxic friends, toxic people, and that's in life. And we don't have any toxicity in our life whatsoever, including family.
It's amazing how such a hard experience can really bring out positives and joy.
It's so emotional when you talk about, not so emotional sad, but so emotional of, and that sounds a bit weird, of being given this gift to realize what you can actually achieve. And I think this is, in my business today, and my clients said, I see the belief in them before they see the belief in themselves, because I know you don't have tomorrow. I know we've got to do this quickly. And that's why they get results so quickly, because shit, I don't want to wait till I'm 65 to live my retirement. I want to live my retirement now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do,
when
we
you
talk
can.
about the book. So I think we're on about our 11th or 12th bucket list. There's things that we do. So we do in our life to make it perfect, to make it good enough. We have a date night every Wednesday. Every Wednesday
Love
between
it.
6 and 8:30, we put the phones down. I know it's really hard for us, but we put the phones down and we go.
It is hard.
We don't go out for an expensive dinner. We go out for dinner. But now in COVID, we can't go out for dinner. And the easy thing was not to have that date night. But no, we stopped working and we sit down and watch TV. But we have a date night together. We go for a walk together. So we're doing things that we're purposeful. We're not letting COVID, we're not letting the curfew, we're not letting restrictions stop us living our life now. And that's something which I think the biggest thing I've taken away from being a carer.
I like the bucket list. Are they all like really not crazy, but like, I want to go to Egypt or like whatever, like the traditional bucket list would be like these like crazy adventures? Or is it more like, I want to camp in our backyard? You know what I mean? Like, does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's even simpler. It's even simpler than that.
Yeah.
So it could be, I want to go for coffee, and actually writing it down and then crossing it off.
I like it.
So a bucket list can be a number of things. You can have a bucket list with 12 buckets. So you want to do one thing once a month. You can have a 7-year bucket list. So you want to achieve one big thing every 7 years. Or you can have a 52-week bucket list. So 52 buckets. And that could be simply, I want to start painting. Or I actually want to do my garden bed. I actually want to plant some seeds. So it's all these things. I talk about it in business, about chicken lists, about things we always want to do, but we never get around to doing it. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing more satisfying than having a great big list and actually drawing that physically. So you don't do this on a computer. You actually write it down and stick it on the wall. There's nothing better than actually drawing a line through that and seeing what you've actually achieved. So it doesn't have to be massive things. So people think a bucket, we've got.
Yeah, that's the traditional thought, is like it's something crazy.
So don't get me wrong, we've got some big things in there. We've got things like we want to go to Antarctic on a boat and do stuff like that. We want to spend a month in Japan. We want to go back to Italy. I want to go back to Spain. I've got this big bucket list that I want to start a cafe.
Ooh, I love it. I wanted to do one of those when I was younger.
It's a very particular way, and it's called Buns and Buns. So buns as in cakes and buns. And it's in Melbourne, it's a cafe district. It's only open from 6 o'clock till 2 o'clock. You get a couple of nice baristas, a couple of nice waitresses. It's the old-fashioned, traditional European standing up and having a coffee. It's almost like a network thing. That's a big goal, right? To do that. What else do we want to get a tattoo? I've always wanted to get a tattoo, so I've got a tattoo to do stuff like this. But, the bucket list is really interesting because my dad passed away in 2018. Mum passed away last year. And because of what I've experienced through Wendy, I took time off. And the time I spent with my parents was priceless. The
Yeah.
time we actually spent just getting, and it's never goodbye. It's always, I'll see you later. But the time we actually managed to spend together and just talk about things and do reminisce about things. And it's actually the book actually got published a week before Dad passed away. That was the goal. So I was actually able to read it too. So, the bucket list is, I would say to everyone, it's about your desire to do things. Like you said, Connor, you can make it as difficult as you want it to make it to be. And I think that's what people's impressions is. The bucket list, I want to climb Mount Everest. I'm never going to climb it. No, you don't have to do that. I want to lose 5 kilos. Great. You know?
I like it. And it's just more realistic too.
Yeah. So none of this is the Olympic champions type stuff. Everything I do is I'm just an ordinary bloke. I'm just an ordinary guy. I'm just, when you see these Olympic champions on stage and talk about, motivation speech, I got up at 4:00 in the morning and I trained for 12 hours. Well, I'm the one eating burger and chips going, well, that ain't going to be me.
Me either.
Right? But if there's a guy in there going, you know what? I walked every day. I walked another mile, and at the end of 12 months' time, I walked 100 miles. I go, you know what? I can do that.
Yeah.
So everything I'm trying to do is I'm never going for that 1%ers. I'm going for the 99% of people that look at that 1% going, well, good luck for them.
Yeah.
There's a company, and both me and Rietta have the book. It's called The Adventure Challenge, right? So I got this book, and you scratch it off, and it has some mystery thing to do. And like the last one we did was like making at home, like the fort, the like blanket fort over your couch and watch a movie. I really liked it. And Tom's like, yeah, I didn't realize you needed somebody to tell you what you want to do. And I was like, shut up. And the next one we're supposed to do is like blindfold baking, where one person's blindfolded and the other person has to help the blindfolded person bake. And I'm like, well, that's going to be interesting.
So the thing I love about that is it's about connecting with each other again. It's about reconnecting with people. It's not about sitting on the TV. It's nothing digital. And these are not big exercises. These are not.
No. Yeah.
These are about investing 45 minutes to an hour with someone that you care about.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And going outside. And when people go, what did you do at the weekend? Oh, I baked a cake blindfolded.
I was just hoping to get some like fun date night ideas because, I bought it like in the middle of COVID, and it shows you like it has like little images on like how much money or time you have to spend away from like your house. So you can choose something that's completely at home, or you can choose something that's completely like not at home and doing something else somewhere else. So I just was like, I thought it'd be fun. And he's like, I didn't know somebody had to tell you. I'm like,
it's not
whatever.
telling you, it's motivation. So tell us more about your charity, the Lungitude Foundation. I hope I said that right.
So it's Lungitude, as in the lungs in.
Yeah.
Lungitude. So, I
like it.
When I talked before about being passion rich, this is probably the thing that I'm most proud about that we did. And it's about the impact. So there was another lung transplant research foundation, and unfortunately that the founder passed away. She had 3 double lung transplants. She actually had the same illness as Wendy.
Wow.
So Wendy had something called primary pulmonary hypertension. So that little blue pill called Viagra?
Yep.
Viagra was actually invented for primary pulmonary hypertension. Then they realized, because it opens up the blood vessels between the heart and the lungs, but then they realized it opens up all the blood vessels in your body. So we could actually make more money out doing something else with the drug.
That's hilarious.
So Margaret had a foundation called the Margaret Pratt. So this is really funny, because remember, these are people with lung transplants who can't properly breathe. So this was called the Margaret Pratt Heart and Lung Transplant Research Foundation, which is a big mouthful with 100% lung capacity, never mind 50% lung capacity.
Yeah.
So in Melbourne, in Australia, we've got this Pratt family that's a very famous Pratt family, and everyone thought it was associated with the Pratt family. It's not. It's the other side of the Pratt family that's not quite as wealthy, not quite as famous. So, and I was on that board. So when Margaret passed away, we sat down with her family and said, look, we would like to set up another foundation, the Lungitude Foundation. And it is started off about funding research into lung transplant rejection, because it was always about why are lungs rejecting, because lungs are quite an interesting organ that The lungs have to reject the air you breathe in as well as your body. So it's fighting two types of rejection constantly.
Wow.
So when we started doing this research and funding the research, what we found was the research we were finding was translational across most organs that transplanted, across hearts, livers, and everything else. Then once we found out some of the reasons why lungs were rejecting, we actually took the research to the start of the cycle. So how can we actually improve the organ donor matching so that lungs don't reject, so people live longer? So today, Lungitude has been responsible for some of the leading research regarding organ transplantation across the world. So the research that we funded has been presented across the world at leading authorities, leading conferences. We've made a positive impact in people's lives, on the social and economic situation of these people, that people are able to get back to work, that don't want to be reliable on hospitals that actually go back. We've also done work on how and when someone can be a donor. So we've improved that rate. We've done a lot of research. A lot of the research we do is very early stage. So it's almost like a hypothesis stage, but it's very outcome based. So the research is valid. And when it's been validated, it's then funded at a much larger scale. We've done all this without any corporate or state or federal support. We've had no corporate support. We've had no federal government support. We don't have a major donor, wealthy donor. Unfortunately, there's no one famous that we know that's had a lung transplant that we can use to benefit.
You never know.
Would you like a lung transplant? No. Well, okay then. So our impact has been absolutely huge. And we've also now invested in research about the carer, about the impact the carer is and how we can do. We've got peer groups set up, and very soon we will be establishing something called the Center of Transplant Excellence. So we're going to bring together thought leadership from around the world and make sure that we can put all this knowledge together. So it's amazing. We know that we've helped people live today because of the research we've done. They don't know that it's come from Lungitude, and nor do we necessarily want them to know from Lungitude, but just knowing that you've made that difference is hugely powerful. Of course, anyone listening, if they want to help out in any way, we are a global charity. More than happy. The website's Lungitude, as in LUNGITUDE.com.au, or contact me, and happy to talk to people. It is something that I never ever thought I'd ever do in my life. I've always been generous with my money, like donating, but actually doing this and actually be purposeful. Yeah, I'm absolutely amazed. I'm absolutely amazed about it. I'm so passionate about it. And I can sit here knowing that the research we've done has kept Wendy alive.
That's amazing. I'm going to have to get my friend in contact with you. She's on a list for a liver transplant. So a lot of stuff that we go through, so when Viagra came out, I actually got in touch with the chief scientist at Pfizer and said, look, my wife needs Viagra. And he says, where are you based? And I said, based in Melbourne. And he says, with the respiratory treatment they offered hospital. I went, yeah, with Greg Snell. He goes, yeah, okay, we'll work out how we're going to get Viagra. So it's global. So people know people around the world. It's absolutely amazing. I get phone calls, not every day, but at least once a week, maybe twice a week, from people going, can you just tell me about your experience, Gordon? I'm having a heart transplant. What does it mean for me? And I'm not a doctor, and I've got to be very careful what I say. We set the foundation up on a couple of things. And I was very particular when we set the foundation up that if someone said to us that when we raise money for research, every single dollar we raise goes to that research. Our admin runs at around about 10 cents in the dollar, but we try to fund that ourselves. That we want to be purposeful. We want to make an impact. No one gets paid to do the job. And we have this thing we have the 3 Gs for the board members: give, go get, or get off.
Nice.
Right. And that's
can't forget that.
Really love, right. And I think that's anyone who's business or anyone who's setting up a charity, that anyone wants to come, you don't do it for your own self-gratification. You give, you go get it, or you get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And it's simple and you can't forget it.
Absolutely.
Rietta's going to start using it for hers.
Absolutely. Have you worked out that a lot of things I do is quite simple? There's not a lot of rocket science we're trying to do. It's just about, like you say, when shit happens, what do you do? Do you want me to be controversial about COVID? So let me talk about it in a positive way. So the thing that being in business, we do business plans.
Yeah.
And people blame our lives today because of COVID. But what COVID proved was that the way we're thinking is actually broken. The way we do business plans is actually broken. And also we think about that what we wanted, the reason why employers didn't like staff working from home wasn't because they weren't capable, because we didn't trust them. Simple as that. Employers didn't trust. Then these same leaders that were saying no suddenly had to say yes because they had no choice. And when we were at home, we suddenly found out that when we're working from home, hey, our productivity goes up. It doesn't matter if you do the washing at 10 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't matter if you go for a walk in the park at 11 o'clock. As long as you're there for the client calls, as long as you actually do the work, no one cares less. What we're actually finding is people actually working longer hours at home because it's easier to work longer hours at home. But people are now realizing, hey, I don't need to travel 2 hours or an hour and a half to work in the morning. Right? Yep. What is really important for me is not the career progression, it's the time I'm spending with my family. So what we're finding is that what COVID has done, COVID has broken the way we think. It hasn't broken our businesses failing is not because of COVID. Businesses is failing because our plans for not failing has failed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So it's about, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror first before you start blaming other people.
Yeah. And I was really lucky. My job has always been remote, and I work for Dell, and they've always had a 50% remote capacity. And now, because of COVID, they're like, yeah, we're going to move this up to 80. Exactly. We don't really need all of these people in the office, or they're giving everybody an option to be like flexible. They can choose when they want to be in the office or when they want to work remote.
So
which is even better.
I'm on a floor. There's 1,500 people on the floor. There's been 2 people in the office for the last 6 months.
Yep.
Right. So
you're living the dream.
Oh, it's brilliant. Got the coffee machine all to myself.
Yeah.
There you go.
So what COVID has shown that when people say no, what they're saying no is they're saying no to their own self-beliefs. They're never saying no to you. They're saying no to the self-belief. And that's what I want people to understand from COVID. COVID has proven that you can do whatever you want to do. Just because someone says no to you doesn't mean it's no. It's no because they're not ready for your growth. They're not ready for your ideas. So take that and make sure that this is going to be the only time we've got several generations at the moment, even for Gen Alpha, which is the latest generation coming through now. They're never going to have an opportunity like COVID again in their lifetime. This opportunity that we've got COVID is a 300 to 400 year event. So your opportunity to do something that you really wanted to do is now, with no regrets, no holding back. I don't want you sitting here in 3 years' time, if only you'd done this, if only you'd done that. Whatever you do, I have 3. Make sure it's legal, right? No one's going to die from it. Okay?
That's a good idea too.
Yeah.
And be 100% invested in what you believe in and what you do it. Because if you don't believe in it yourself, then no one else is going to believe in it either. So COVID has proven that the way we think is broken. What it's allowed us to do now is saying, well, okay, the textbook you've got is a blank textbook. It's got we can't do a degree on living with COVID. Right? There's no degree in it. That what you want to do from this moment forward, the total destiny is you. Right? And today, if you turn around to someone and say, I don't want a corporate career, 18 months ago, they would have said, you're crazy. 18 months ago, if you said, I don't want to do a degree, they would have said, you're crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now a lot of people are doing like their own thing from home, whether it's like an Etsy store, coaching, like a lot of people have just kind of switched because the way we've done business in the past just isn't working.
And we've also found out that the one thing that we miss most and the one thing we crave a lot is that human to human connection. Zoom's good, but actually this sounds a bit creepy, but it's not meant to be creepy, but just feeling and touching each other. Like giving each other a shake and just having a coffee or drink, we miss that craving. So yes, we can talk about a digitized world and technology and AI and everything else, and LinkedIn, Facebook, and blah blah blah. But let's not forget that out of all the animals on this planet, it's actually the humans that that we crave. We crave that we crave that interaction as a friendship, not as a lifelong love partner, but as a friendship. We crave that, and this is the opportunity to do it. I don't care whether you want to take a caravan or an RV and go traveling around the States or Australia or Europe or whatever it is. But if you're sat here in 3 years' time going, if only, then you've got yourself to blame.
Yep. Okay, so ready for your fun question?
Go on then.
All right. What is the biggest thing on your bucket list that you want to like accomplish within the next 7 years or 10 years or whatever?
The biggest thing I want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Can I have one or can I have two?
You can have two. That's fine.
Okay. So the biggest challenge is going to Antarctica. So that's I want to do that, Wendy. And the biggest challenge for that is we have to fly to Santiago from Australia, which is a massive flight. And Santiago is not a place that Wendy can stay in because of the health system. The other thing is you've got to get on a boat from there to Antarctica, and being on a cruise is not something that Wendy can do. Good old Wendy, she's found a very executive boat that only has 32 cabins. So let's work out how much that's going to bloody cost me. Okay. And each cabin's got its own butler. I'm going, bloody hell. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing that will be on our bucket list, and it's quite straight. I can't believe I'm saying this in 2021 is the opportunity to go back to Italy and go back to Castello Banfi. And I say that because that is, given where we are in this world pandemic and everything, I don't know A, when we'll have international travel again, or B, when it will be safe for Wendy to travel.
Yeah.
But to be able to go back there and live that moment again, not as if it's our last holiday, but live that moment as it's, people talk about what would you do in your last day of your life. And I go, well, what would you do if this was the first day of your life?
Yeah.
And change. And I think that would be a massive bucket list for us to do again.
Plus, you have to take a picture of Banfi at Banfi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah. So there is the real Banfi. Real Banfi is in a glass case, the original one that I've had for many, many years, and he's very, very securely found. But yeah, we'll definitely do Banfi there, and that's what we do. Outside that, the other on the bucket list, every day's a bucket list. I wake up every morning, thank myself that I'm breathing, thank myself that Wendy's breathing, thank ourselves that we are together. I'm not a religious person. Funny enough, Wendy's lungs did come from a nun, which I thought was quite funny.
That is funny.
That is interesting. It's ironic.
So we know they were very healthy. And, that's a great question for the bucket list. And, anyone that's listening to that, anyone that's listening to today, I just want them to go to when they finish listening, to switch everything else off and just get a pen and paper and just write down
a bucket list.
Just write down 3 things you want to do in the next 7 days. And then once you've done then, and share it on the website, share it with everyone. And then next week, write another 3. And then the week after, write another 3. And then write what you want to do. And just do it. Time moves forward, only moves forward. And we're every single day on this planet is one day less we have on this planet.
All right, listeners, you've got your work to do. Write down your 3 things.
And I think this is the perfect ending spot. So Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I don't want to say thank you. What I want to say is I really appreciate it, because I think what you're doing on the podcast and what the other guests you have and reaching out just makes everyone, just puts into context where we are in the world at the moment, and make us really, really appreciate the things around us. So I want to thank you guys for getting this up and running and doing this.
Lovely. So, guys, don't forget to check out the podcast every Friday. This is How to Deal When Shit Gets Real. Don't forget about our social media and YouTube and everything. We're out everywhere. So come check us out for new episodes every Friday. Thank you so much for joining us.